Hey, everybody. I'm Mike. I'm here with Benjamin. We're going to have a conversation saying hi to Benjamin. Then he's going to go on mute, and we are going to go talk about some resources. As you guys know, we're having these conversations every night, just checking in with lawyers, seeing how we're doing. And I also like to share some resources with you. Please, in the comments below, you can say hi. You can ask questions about what people are trying. You can tell us what you're doing. We just like to see you. So let me jump over and share. I'm going to put you on pause here for a second, Benjamin. I'm going to switch over to the Lawyer Forward group and share a couple of resources. So the first thing that I wanted to share, if you guys, Mary Jutton was one of the speakers at the Lawyer Forward virtual event. She talked about hoarding cash rather than toilet paper, which is still to me just a super funny title. But she wrote this article in Forbes that I thought it's pretty good. She talks about, it's sort of listicle style, so it talks about these different things that you can do to live through this moment and to get to the other side. So these are principles, right? These are fairly big ideas. Boy, this does not want to update. I love me some Skype. I don't really, but man, it eats up bandwidth. We tried to do, I was on Ernie Svensson's event today. We tried to do Zoom with like 80 people or something. It was a bit of a train wreck technologically, but Skype is probably still worse. So anyway, there's Mary's article. I wanted to also, in that event, when I was talking to a group about marketing, a lawyer mentioned that he had done a video and he hated it, right? And he was super self-conscious about it, but he had read that video is a really nice way to connect with people. And so he was like, what do I do with this now? And Mark Homer was on there, and he mentioned a couple of things that one can do with video once you have it. This piece from Gary Vaynerchuk talks about 64 ways that, 64 pieces of content you can take from one video. You'll notice with these sessions that I'm taking these, I'm using Ecamm for Live, and it allows me to have an interview, which is a pretty easy piece of content to put together. So I can record one of these, just like you guys can with community people in your community, do an interview, and then you can send it over to YouTube. It also gives you a video, like a video file on your computer. You could take that, drag it over into, GarageBand, split the audio, put that onto a podcast, send it over to rev.com, get it transcribed, turn it into a bunch of stuff. So there's really cool ways. If you start with video as sort of your top piece, there's really cool ways to get it to, trickle down to a lot of other pieces. The final thing I wanted to share with you, this is going to come off a little bit nerdy, and as somebody who worked at Casetext for a while, this was interesting to me, and it is a little bit nerdy. Hey, Moshe, how are you? It is very nerdy, and I'm going to share this with you. Sorry, let me get... Moshe now gets to make fun of me for adding the comment when my video is still up. I'm still learning, brother. So Ross... Okay, if you guys don't know about the legal research tools, most of you are in Texas and you have access to Fastcase. But Ross is one of these startups that's similar to Casetext. They're using AI. They're trying to remove the human element in a lot of the legal research tools to make it more affordable so that solo and small firm lawyers, among others, can use it. Yesterday they got sued. They were sued by Westlaw, by Thomson Reuters, for taking information in the wrong way, basically, that they borrowed somebody else's account, apparently, to pull data from. This is what Thomson Reuters is alleging. And then Ross came out and sort of defended the way they use this data. This sounds really esoteric and crazy, but this is fundamental to me. Like, this is a huge deal about the availability of information and what it is that makes lawyers lawyers, right? Because the model has been, I tell a story in the book about essentially how J.P. Morgan got exclusive control of electricity, and then he would sell that monopoly to electricians locally to be able to use the electricity. And that was sort of the model of law. Like these publishers had exclusive access to the information, and then they would sort of lease it out to us, giving us exclusive control of the information, and then we would use that out for people. This thing with Ross and the case that just went through the Supreme Court for the stuff out of Georgia, this stuff is actually hugely important for what it means to be a lawyer, for the value offering that we have, what our role is relative to consumers. Really interesting stuff. So I hope you guys will keep on top of that. So all that said, while Moshe in the comments tells me how to properly use this tool, he is the smart person who brought me to this. So thank you, Moshe. Real quick, we're going to talk to Benjamin about how he's surviving the craziness. First, I would just remind everybody, you can go post in social using hashtag AskTwinsies. And Nick and I on Sunday will give you terrible, awful advice. It is truly bad. We've given advice on baked goods and twerking and relationships, and it's all bad. So make sure you join us for that. Can't miss it. Benjamin, how are you?
How you doing, Mike?
It's all part of the plan, man. We're all just figuring it out. So remind me, you're in Houston, yeah?
I'm in Houston. I do consumer law and family law. True solo.
Solo. Are you using I want to ask how you are and how you're adjusting and all these things, but just a little background on your practice. Are you using like even outsourced phone calls, or are you using a VA in the Philippines to schedule a point? Is it literally just you doing the whole shebang?
It was until a few months ago, but I now have a virtual assistant, so I use an answering service. And then I have a paralegal that I know locally who sort of does some freelance work. So I've had her do a couple projects. My phone does not ring. I don't have any interruptions from phone calls because it all goes to the virtual assistant, and then there's a way that they process the calls.
That is probably a good thing. I wrote about in the book, this big firm lawyer was telling me that his manager got on to him for not answering an email within 15 minutes. And he was like, dude, but I was working on the thing you told me to. How can I work on the thing if I answer the phone? He's like, that's the expectation. That just really irks me. You can't do deep work and be interrupted all the time. That's not a thing. So you're in Houston. You said you do consumer and some family. Is that what you said?
Correct.
So what are you seeing out there? What are the trend? What's the demand look like? Is your phone ringing? Tell me what your experience is right now.
So I'm more known for my consumer than the family, so I'll sort of stick to that. Right now, the government has done everything to protect my potential clients. So I really don't have. I basically do a lot of debt defense. I do eviction defense, foreclosure defense, do some auto fraud and things like that. So kind of everything that would be my client base is being protected by the government. But now that the governments are going to start allowing evictions and foreclosures and sort of debt lawsuits, I think all that will come through.
Yeah, I meant to ask you about that. I think the story that I saw was here in Kansas City area on the Kansas side, that some landlord at some apartment sent a notice to everybody in the apartment that said, you're still going to have to pay your rent. Like, you should just pay your rent right now because it's just piling up. Assuming that the government these state governments had this rule where you can't evict for 3 months or whatever, and that rent is just piling up, what's going to happen? Do they just turn that spigot back on and everybody's 90 days in arrears and everybody gets kicked out? Do we know yet how that's going to transition out?
Well, pretty much the rules are that, at least here in Texas, that you can file the lawsuit, you can give the notice to vacate, you can file the lawsuit, but there's a delay in serving the lawsuit. There's a delay on actually hearing a trial on the eviction. So, it's not like people get a free pass, and they can still get the notices. And so, we're just going to end up having potentially, a lot of evictions ready. However, we're starting to get sort of government rent relief now. In Houston, for example, just this week, they have a fund that they set aside to help pay for tenants' rent. But of course, there's a lot of issues about how that's going to be doled out, right, who's going to qualify, things like that.
Don't have it go through Bank of America. That's a pro tip.
So the other thing I want to say real quick is that, for example, in Houston, so in Texas, we have to have a public place for foreclosure. and there's no law that says you can't have a foreclosure in Texas right now. However, locally, the Harris County judge, who's in charge of all the county buildings, has said that we are not making any county buildings available
Right.
to congregate. So she, in effect, overrode the state law for the foreclosures to say we're not having foreclosures in Houston, in Harris County, because you can't congregate. So that was pretty interesting.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I was having a conversation with Helen Bukulmez yesterday about immigration stuff, and President Trump did this immigration ban, and it really didn't matter because all the offices were closed anyway, right? So there was functionally a ban already. So as far as you're concerned, though, like when a client would call you, a potential client would call you, it would be when they get served, right, with notice that, hey, you've been sued. And it sounds like what you're saying is those don't even exist right now. So will it happen on like a Tuesday? They say, okay, you can deliver it. And now on a Wednesday, you're just going to get an absurd number of calls because people are all being served on a certain day. Is that how that's going to go?
Well, think? I don't think it's all going to happen on one day, but certainly there are dates in Texas that say by this date we can turn back on the spigot, so to speak. We can start serving now. We can start doing trials. We can start doing writs of possession. And so these are sort of timed, but of course that deadline has been moved throughout this pandemic. So who knows whether the current deadline will stay the way it is.
And Houston's fairly blue, isn't it? It's a fairly Democratic city, as I recall. Like all the judges switched recently or something, as I recall.
Right.
Switched parties.
The Houston itself is blue, but of course everything else around us is red.
Yeah, without, obviously I don't care about the politics, but it is interesting that you look at the data and basically people's perception of how bad this is really associated with what political party you identify with. So, in red states, they're doing very different things than they are in blue states. And in blue cities, they're doing things very differently than in red cities. It's sort of a freaky alternate, to America's thing that just is crazy. So that's the consumer side. Are you getting family cases still? Had you even marketed for that, or were you just taking them like when they came?
Yeah, I'm sort of just taking them when they come. I mean, people know that I do them, and I will try. I do have some sort of lead sources
right.
that I try to get cases on, but all my cases most of them come from referrals from either other attorneys or clients. And then I have a few internet lead sources that give me some leads. And that's how I've been surviving. Quite frankly, there hasn't been a whole lot of new cases, right. But this has given me the opportunity to do a whole lot of other stuff during this time.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I mean, largely what I've been asking people is what are you trying, right? Like what's something that you weren't doing before that you're doing now to try to, just plant a seed and see what happens. It sounds like you're doing a lot of self-development stuff and a lot of, are you doing a lot of social things, networking type things? Like how are you using this time differently?
Well, I'm definitely, I've always been social. I'm also a bar leader, so I still have my bar associations that I'm doing projects for. I'm on a couple magazine editorial boards, one in Houston and one for the ABA. So we still have publications we got to get out. I have a national legal column in a national legal magazine that's like self-help and business development for lawyers. So I still write those. So I've been doing, I've still been doing a lot of that. Plus I've been doing a lot of learning in terms of marketing and branding. And so I'm just not one to sit home and sort of binge on Netflix and things like that. So I'm doing, the only difference is because I have my office, I have two offices, but my primary office is in home. And my entire first floor is my office suite. And then my personal living space is upstairs. So quite frankly, other than going to court, the way I practice has not changed. So,
yeah,
I still get up and all that.
Yeah, I've sort of, maybe this will resonate with you. I've sort of, maybe to avoid this moment, I've been trying to think about what's my 5-year plan or 10-year plan or whatever. And I go through these two different phases where sometimes that's a relief to not think about right this second and to see the big picture and see where I'm going. And sometimes I'm like, holy crap, I've got a lot of work to do, right? Like to get to that,
Right.
5-year plan and that 10-year plan. So sometimes it gets overwhelming. So I have this sort of cycle in the day where I'm like, this sucks. I'm going to think 5 years from now. And then I go, wait, this sucks now. I'm going to go watch Chuck. And I've just been sort of binging back through Chuck and eating brownies. Okay, don't do what I do, people. Do what Benjamin does. I wanted to ask you, actually, on the personal side, it sounds like not much has changed in terms of work management stuff. How are you staying engaged? I mean, like I've got my kids. I am not lonely, right? Like I want
Right.
these people to leave me alone is what I'm the opposite of lonely. How how are you dealing with staying in touch with people and keeping connected right now?
Well, I do a lot. I do some exercises in the park and things. So I actually see people that way. But there's all sorts of ways to stay engaged with people virtually. It's not like I'm sitting at home not seeing a human face or not hearing a human voice. I'm in working groups that have judges and attorneys and mediators trying to figure out what the next thing looks like in terms of how we deal with this pandemic and the judicial system. There are happy hours, so we've had some virtual happy hours. But you can find, I've had a lot of CLEs. I've had to cut down some of my CLEs, but certainly if you want human interaction, you can still get it. What you can't get a whole lot right now is the human touch.
Yeah.
And for someone like me who knows the top 5 love languages, and mine is physical touch, that's a bit of a problem. But as far as interaction, I'm definitely getting my fill of it.
Yeah, I'm not usually a hugger because I don't like people in my space, but when I go to conferences, I like going to conferences and seeing people. And it's weird because like I'm doing all these I'm probably seeing people more now than I ever did, 3 months ago. I was way more isolated then, even though I wasn't. And now I'm seeing a lot more people, but there's still just that, like you mentioned, just that physical distance creates, a stress, creates an anxiety that's weird because I really don't like people touching me, but I do. It's weird. It's me. I'm the weird one, Benjamin. Me.
Well, I still go out to the grocery store. I still go to the post office. There's definitely, you know, human interaction. So I'm not. In other words, I know there are some attorneys who have just stayed home. Now, I will say the caveat is I don't have kids,
Right.
so my life looks a lot different than someone who has kids, and I recognize that. So I don't
Sure.
have to stay home because I got to watch the kids. So I'm able to do a lot of different things because of my freedom.
My wife is my most demanding child. She wants my attention a lot, and so it's hard,
I
getting.
don't have one of those.
Yeah, getting. I love her madly, but it is, to your point about phone calls, it is really hard to do deep work when like you're being talked to. And I maybe you are able to do this. One of the things I talked to Helen about this yesterday, just to break up my day. I would be working at home, and then I'm like, my brain is mud. I'm going to go drive over to the Starbucks. My brain is mud. I'm going to drive over to the Wendy's and sit in the thing and drink a soda, whatever. Right? Like I'm just bouncing. Now I'm trying to do the same thing just to break my brain up. But like I can't even sit on the couch without souls everywhere. So I took over my son's bedroom to create this fake office, and this is awesome because it's super quiet. It's down in the corner. We've got good lighting, and my son is off fighting fires, so he's never here. So it's pretty great.
And
Well,
you have a
cool.
dog. Well, you have 14 animals. That's
I
right.
do.
You have
It's like
14.
13, 14. I don't know. We've killed a couple recently, unfortunately. Don't get my kids going on that.
I don't have a cute lizard that I can show everybody like you do.
I don't have cute lizards either. We just have lizards, and they touch me, and they're creepy. The snake, as an aside, I go out of this room after that broadcast, and I walk out, and my son Noah is freaking out because the snake had gotten out of its cage and was up on out of its, whatever you call it, the glass thing. It had gotten out of the tank and was like and he just walked in the dark, and it was there, like scurrying around. And
Oh, wow.
that I told my son that's going to be the last one I do, because if the apocalypse lasts that long, you can wrap a snake around me. If not,
So who grabs the snake
the
to pick it up?
the firefighter kid who's never here. So I have no support. Benjamin, you got a lot going on. You mentioned a lot of content that you're part of creating, and that's close to my heart. So if people want to follow up with you and just learn, especially about the mental health side of this stuff and dealing with these struggles, what's the best way to follow you or learn from you or contact you? How should people connect?
I'm most active on Facebook, so you can just find me, Benjamin K. Sanchez. I also have a website called Ronin Reports. It's RON as in Nancy, IN as in Nancy, reports.com. That's my column, and I try to keep that updated. I just came out with one that actually made the AVA homepage for a couple of weeks out of all the content that the AVA does, because I talked about planning for crisis. So there are things that I do in my column that really help people. So RoninReports.com, or just look me up on Facebook.
Well, very cool. I appreciate it. Everybody, remember, you can continue to talk to Benjamin in the comments below. He can see those things. You can keep that conversation going. And then also remember to use hashtag AskTwinsies to ask for really terrible advice from me and Nick Rishwain on Sunday. I think we're going to have another person. This is how narcissistic, it's really Nick, is. We need somebody who laughs at us. So we're trying to recruit somebody who will just laugh at it. It just makes us feel better. That's all we need. So use Ask
You mean
Twinsies.
laugh with you or laugh at you?
Oh no, totally at us. Yeah, no.
Okay.
The way my daughter put it to me was, well, because you're both old men, then paused. Then said, maybe you should have a young person who gets on there and just tells you you're idiots. So she was volunteering. So thank you guys. Thank you, Benjamin. We will see you guys tomorrow night.
See you guys.